Leonard Volkov was the kind of musician who could make time stop with a single stroke of his bow. Every performance was a masterpiece. Every note, a carefully placed brushstroke on an invisible canvas that only the most gifted could truly understand. For decades, he had mesmerized audiences around the world, but his upcoming concert at Grand Variety Hall was meant to be his grandest achievement yet. The piece he was set to play was shrouded in secrecy, a composition so rare and so profound that its very existence had been questioned for over a century. But on the eve of this legendary performance, Leonard Volkov vanished. His hotel suite remained untouched, with no signs of struggle or forced entry. His personal belongings were in place, including his violin, resting silently in its velvet-lined case, like a relic waiting for its master. The only anomaly was a single sheet of music left on the desk, its notes unfamiliar, and its melody unknown to even the most seasoned of composers. To those unfamiliar with music, it was nothing more than ink on parchment, but to those who could read it, there was something strange about the way the notes moved across the staff. Patterns within patterns, hints of something unspoken, something waiting to be deciphered. The disappearance of Leonard Volkov sent shockwaves through the classical music world. Investigators speculated that he had fled, perhaps overwhelmed by the pressure of his performance. Others whispered about secret affairs, unpaid debts, or even a descent into madness. But for one person, none of these theories felt right. Eleanor Volkov had not spoken to her father in over a decade. Their last conversation had ended in slammed doors and bitter accusations, and she had long since buried the part of herself that once idolized him. She had walked away from music, from the weight of his expectations, and from the world he had so easily lost himself in. Now, she spent her days in a dimly lit office, barely scraping by as a private investigator who mostly handled cheating spouses and missing pets. When she received the call about her father's disappearance, her first instinct was to ignore it. But something about the single sheet of music, its mystery and deliberate placement, drew her in. She had spent her childhood decoding his compositions, studying the way he hid messages in melodies, embedding stories within harmonies. She knew this was not just another song. This was a message. The first clue lay within the notes themselves. At first glance, the melody seemed disjointed, almost impossible to play. When she studied it closely, she saw something hidden within the rests and sharps, a series of coordinates. They led her to the area archives, a forgotten section of the city's grandest library, where the dust of time had settled over a collection of compositions that had never been played in public. It was there that she first heard the name Matteo De Luca, a composer who had lived and died over a century ago, leaving behind nothing but whispers of a masterpiece lost to time. The deeper she dug, the more she realized that her father's disappearance was tied to an old secret buried beneath layers of forgotten music. The Silent Sonata, as it was called, was said to contain a message, a truth so dangerous that it had been erased from history. The legend spoke of a piece written not in celebration, but in confession, a melody that told the story of a murder hidden within the very fabric of its composition. De Luca had been found dead in his study before he could ever reveal the sonata's meaning, and his work had been scattered and lost to time. Now, over a century later, Leonard Volkov had rediscovered the sonata, and someone had made sure he would never play it. As Eleanor followed the music's trail, she uncovered a world she had never known existed. A secret society known as the Orpheus Order, an elite circle of musicians and scholars, had dedicated themselves to preserving the hidden messages embedded in compositions throughout history. These were not ordinary songs. They were confessions, warnings, evidence of long-buried crimes encoded within melodies only the most gifted could hear. But the order was divided. Some wished to reveal the truth, while others believed some secrets were better left buried. Leonard had been caught between them, and now, so was she. As Eleanor searched for her father, she found herself pursued by unseen enemies, men in dark suits who watched her from the shadows and followed her every move. When her apartment was broken into, her carefully gathered notes scattered and burned, she knew she had gotten too close, but she refused to stop. With the help of Victor Graves, a former composer turned musicologist, she uncovered the full composition of the sonata, hidden within the city's oldest concert halls, scratched into the walls of forgotten opera houses, tucked away in the margins of ancient hymnals, and whispered through echoes of long-abandoned theaters. the clues slowly revealed themselves. Each discovery brought her closer to her father, but also closer to the truth. The Silent Sonata was not just music. It was a confession that implicated some of the city's most powerful figures. The final piece of the puzzle came when she discovered the truth behind Leonard's captor. Sebastian Dorn, a wealthy patron of the arts, had spent his life collecting forbidden compositions and hoarding them like stolen treasures. He had hunted for the Silent Sonata for decades, fearing what it would reveal. The murder it spoke of had granted his family its fortune. If the sonata were ever played in full, the truth would come to light, and the empire he had built on lies would crumble. Eleanor knew what had to be done. She arranged for the performance to take place at Grand Varetti Hall, the same place where her father was meant to debut the lost masterpiece. With a secret recording of Leonard playing the piece in its entirety, she ensured the sonata would be heard by the world. As the final note rang out across the hall, the message hidden within the music was clear. A confession in sound, a crime exposed through melody. But as the applause thundered, a gunshot rang out. Dorn, desperate to stop the truth, had made one final move. Eleanor barely saw the flash of the barrel before she was thrown to the ground. The chaos that followed was a blur of screams, security guards, and flashing cameras. By the time the dust settled, Dorn was in handcuffs, and the world knew the truth. Leonard Volkov was found alive, shaken but unharmed, in the depths of Dorn's estate. The reunion between father and daughter was neither warm nor immediate, but it was something, a beginning. The years of resentment could not be erased overnight, but in the silence between them, there was understanding. The Silent Sonata had finally been heard. Its truth had been set free. And as Eleanor stood in the empty concert hall that night, listening to the echoes of the music still lingering in the air, she realized that she had found something she had not known she was looking for. Not just her father, but her music. And maybe, just maybe, herself.